Amazing black CEO exposes incredible injustice after being denied a room in her own hotel. Jasmine Lewis stood outside the grand entrance of the Savannah Hotel, the crimson brick gleaming in the late afternoon sun. After years of blood, sweat, and relentless ambition, here she was, her flagship property. Yet, as the doorman stepped aside, an inescapable dread coiled in her stomach. Her heart hammered as she approached the front desk. The manager looked right through her, bushy eyebrows furrowed in unyielding judgment. "We don't allow locals to stay," he announced, his voice cold, dismissing her as if she were a stray dog. Humiliation washed over Jasmine, reddening her cheeks. She felt stripped bare, exposed not just as a CEO, but as a woman tied to a family history filled with trials and resilience. The weight of her grandmother's words echoed painfully in her mind. Never forget where you come from, but always keep your head high. Yet here she was, a reflection of her success met with the barriers that once oppressed her ancestors. Should she confront him? The thought pricked at her resolve. She knew the stakes of her identity and what she had achieved, yet at this moment it felt pitifully fragile. A local. The implication stung like an accusation, shattering the fantasy of unity she longed for. Did her success mean nothing against the bricks of prejudice? The tension twisted inside her like a vice. Grounded in the heart of this hotel was the foundation of her family's legacy. But did her name even matter anymore? A black woman, once underestimated, now a CEO? Anxiety wrapped its fingers around her thoughts, threatening to pull her down into despair. How could she navigate this moment of blatant disrespect without compromising her integrity? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The indignation simmered within her, a passion igniting, a fire prepared to burn through the ignorance. Her instincts drove her to launch a public relations campaign to expose this blatant injustice. Yet as she began gathering her team, the familiar concerns settled back into her chest. Could she lead them toward change while facing internal prejudices she had long ignored? She paused, grappling with her own fears, questioning if a fight could jeopardize her hard-earned legacy. With every revelation of hidden bias within her own corporate culture, the distance between ambition and reality widened into an abyss of doubt. Jasmine realized she was fighting a war on two fronts, against systemic bias and against herself. In a shocking twist, unearthing property documents revealed her ancestors' struggles. They had once been the caretakers, laboring quietly behind the scenes as guests reveled, their pain buried beneath the layers of overlooked history. She stood at a crossroads, stand silent and protect her empire, or roar with the voices of her ancestors, demanding recognition and change. But what if her fight splintered the very foundation she had built? Jasmine wrestled with the truth that her legacy, while dazzling on the surface, had roots tangled in injustice. In these final moments before the confrontation loomed brightly, she understood the stakes rising not just for her career, but for the honor of those who had walked before her. Would she let their sacrifices fade into silence, or boldly reclaim the narrative, risking it all for dignity and truth? Jasmine inhaled deeply, bracing herself against the tide of self-doubt. Every emotion crowded her mind. The fire of indignation was battling fear, and the echoes of her ancestors mingled with a determination welling up from within. She felt empowered and vulnerable all at once, the weight of history urging her toward action. After a long, contemplative moment, she turned away from the front desk, leaving behind the judgmental gaze of the hotel manager. As she stepped outside, the city seemed to breathe differently, as if reflecting her changing internal landscape. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow that illuminated the paths ahead. Determination replaced dread as her mind shifted from reaction to strategy. She would turn this humiliation into a turning point, not just for herself, but for those who had come before her, and those who would follow. Jasmine withdrew her smartphone, fingers deftly tapping as she began pouring her thoughts into a post for social media. "They think I'm just a local. They think my success is unearned," she typed, pausing only to gaze at her reflection in the glass of the hotel entrance. Her image stared back at her, the confident entrepreneur, the resilient descendant of those who had overcome far worse. With a final tap, she hit send and felt a rush of exhilaration and fear intermingle. This would be the catalyst for change. Within hours, the online community responded. Messages poured in, stories of similar experiences shared by countless others, striking chords of solidarity and outrage. Jasmine saw the forgotten faces of many who, like her, had battled the weight of ignorance. Each interaction fueled a fire within, widening her resolve to dismantle the systemic barriers that had long oppressed her. With her head held high, she gathered her executive team the next morning, channeling the energy from the overwhelming support. It took courage to show this vulnerability, but she understood that authenticity would be her greatest tool. She laid out the plan. A comprehensive campaign aimed at the broader dialogue around inclusivity and accountability in hospitality. The stakes had never been higher, and the fear of conflict faded as resolution took its place. However, not all were on board. As Jasmine presented her vision, she noticed subtle expressions of dissent among some team members. The younger, more diverse members were eager, passionate about being agents of change. Yet the seasoned executives, many conditioned by years of societal norms, hesitated. They questioned the potential fallout. What would the investors think? Would this jeopardize their financial stability? In their eyes, Jasmine saw the haunting whispers of doubt she had once wrestled with. But she refused to let their fears dictate her vision. "Change is uncomfortable," Jasmine said, her voice steady, slicing through the room's tension. "It's unsettling for me too, but if we don't confront this, we betray what we stand for. This is our chance to shape a legacy that respects both our past and our future." In that moment, Jasmine felt the weight of the room shift, an acknowledgement that the struggle was bigger than any single person. It was about the unity of their collective mission. As she wrapped up the meeting, Jasmine felt transformed, yet she was acutely aware that this journey was merely beginning. The confrontation she had long feared with herself was now an opportunity to redefine everything she had fought for. Her heart was racing, but this time it was not from fear, it was the thrill of purpose. Yet lurking behind her newfound resolve was an ominous question. In the face of privilege and deep-rooted traditions, how far would she be able to push before the walls of her empire began to crack? As the sun set behind Savannah's historic buildings, casting long shadows, Jasmine felt the weight of the moment. The time had come to face not just the external obstacles, but also the intangible fears threatening to stifle her mission. How would she maintain her composure and mission while navigating the complex emotions of those around her? Would it be enough to lead with conviction when the resistance became personal? Jasmine sat at her desk, her fingertips hovering over the keyboard as she read through the torrent of reactions to her post. The screen was alive with emotion, supportive comments, validations, and challenges. Despite the steady stream of encouragement, she couldn't shake the weight of the doubts expressed by some of the veteran executives. It gnawed at her, a persistent echo of their fears punctuating her thoughts. The stakes were high, and she was painfully aware that every decision she made could ripple through her organization in ways she couldn't foresee. She leaned back in her chair, letting out a slow breath. Today's meeting had shifted something within her, but it also left her grappling with how to navigate the nuances. Her position as a leader wasn't merely one of authority, it was a crucible of moral responsibility. With her team divided, Jasmine understood she needed to bridge the gaps, to channel the momentum of change while honoring the fears that tethered the more traditional executives. The sun streamed through her office window, throwing warm light across the papers scattered around her. They were outlines of her plans, sketches for a campaign that would confront systemic bias within the hospitality industry. Uniquely passionate, Jasmine knew she had a fire burning within her, yet she recognized that sometimes flames needed careful tending to spread, rather than risk being snuffed out by misunderstanding. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A notification blinked. Another investor had responded, cautiously supportive but requesting a risk assessment. It struck her that their trust, once a solid foundation, was now feeling shaky. Yet their hesitation was based on unfamiliarity. She realized she needed to articulate her vision more vividly. She decided to draft a presentation for the next investor meeting, a sophisticated approach combining both passion and practical foresight. Outlining potential benefits alongside risk assessments would reveal the strategic depth of her mission. She wanted them to see how her vision for inclusivity wasn't merely a moral choice, but could also position their brand as a forerunner in a changing market. That evening, as she assembled her slides, Jasmine confronted the deeper issue lurking beneath her plans: her own insecurities. Had she miscalculated the influence her background would have on the company culture? Would her ambition to overhaul existing paradigms create more discord, fracturing their already fragile alliances? Determined to push past these thoughts, Jasmine began to visualize success. She imagined her campaign not just as a corporate strategy, but as a movement, an opportunity to reshape perceptions and empower marginalized voices in hospitality. When she awoke the next day, she felt renewed, bearing a commitment to lead with authenticity while navigating the minefield of her team's differing perspectives. Arriving at work, she gathered everyone again for an open dialogue. "I know this isn't easy," she began slowly, gauging the room, "but we have the chance here to define what our legacy will look like. Your fears are valid, but we cannot be paralyzed by them. Let's talk not just about risks, but about our goals. What do we want to achieve together?" As she embraced their concerns, fostering a space for honest conversation, Jasmine noticed a shift. The executives grew more engaged, curious even. She encouraged them to bring their own experiences and insights into the mix. Each voice mattered, and removing the weight of hierarchy would allow for genuine collaboration. Yet beneath the discussions, the barriers persisted. Age-old biases, unsaid fears, the loss of comfort in traditions long upheld. She stepped into a leadership role that felt unfamiliar, crafting an atmosphere where even antiquated notions could be respected while nudging them toward the brink of transformation. As they exchanged stories, Jasmine felt the walls between differing perspectives begin to crack. But just as hope ignited, an unwelcome thought invaded. Would her desire for change ignite flames too consuming for the fragile connections forming around her? The question lingered in her mind, heavy with possibility as she readied for the upcoming investor meeting. The true test loomed ahead. Would they see the merit in her vision, or would they harness fear instead? With her heart picking up speed, Jasmine steeled herself. The battle between comfort and progress was just beginning, and she was determined to navigate every doubt, every hesitation. After all, wouldn't every revolutionary path be paved with resistance? Jasmine paced the corridor of her office, the walls seeming to close in with each step. She had always been confident in her vision, yet the internal rumbles of doubt had morphed into a cacophony resonating within her. Today's investor meeting was looming larger in her mind than anticipated, not just as a chance to secure funding, but as a critical juncture for her leadership. She pulled out her notes, scanning through the objectives she'd highlighted. It struck her once more, the deeper ramifications of what she was advocating for. Every slide and bullet point needed to do more than showcase statistics. They had to ignite passion and stir fears into a transformative energy. She envisioned her audience responding, not with skepticism, but with a willingness to step into the unknown alongside her. As she prepared her final slides, she felt a shift within. This was no longer merely a corporate initiative, it was personal. The scars of past injustices ran deep, threading through the hospitality arena, and she was determined to carve out a discourse that resonated on both emotional and professional levels. Yet a nagging worry twisted in her gut. Had her experiences truly equipped her with the resilience needed to face this sea of resistance? When the time arrived, Jasmine stood at the head of the conference table, surrounded by the executives, the same individuals whose apprehensive faces had once cast shadows over her intentions. Their gazes flickered with uncertainty, and for a moment, she felt the lion's share of her resolve waver. It would be easy to yield to the safety of their comfort zones, to present a palatable version of her vision. But as she inhaled deeply, she recalled the raw conversations they had, the shared vulnerabilities. They were searching for someone to lead them through this murky terrain. "Thank you for coming today," she began, her voice steady. "What we're talking about isn't simply a campaign. It's a necessary evolution for us as leaders in the hospitality industry." Her words slid through the air, threading intent into the fabric of the room. She presented the risks, outlining how the potential for backlash existed. Yet her conviction grew stronger as she illustrated the strategic advantages of embracing change. The vast demographic shifts that demanded acknowledgement, the financial benefits that would follow inclusivity, the potential to position their brand at the forefront of a necessary cultural reckoning. As Jasmine spoke, she identified the trepidation in the executive's eyes changing. The path to progress was daunting, but she felt them beginning to lean in. Suddenly, the question she had feared would come was posed by a senior executive, his brow furrowed. "What if this fails? What happens to our reputation?" A shiver ran down her spine. She recognized that this confrontation was pivotal. "What if it succeeds?" she shot back, her voice rising above the whispers of hesitation. "What if we become a model for the industry? A shining beacon for change and growth?" Throughout the discussion, the tension rippled. Executives exchanged looks, the weight of her challenge hanging in the air. For Jasmine, every word became a litmus test of her conviction. The more they engaged, the more she uncovered her own hidden strength, the ability not only to confront fear, but to forge a path through it. As she navigated their responses, she began to acknowledge her own capabilities. This wasn't just about the company. It was a movement. An opportunity for every individual present to commit to progress. As the meeting wrapped up, she felt a shift, a sense of unity emerging from their collective fears. They may not have reached consensus, yet Jasmine sensed a willingness to explore the uncomfortable. But as she left the conference room, a new question flickered in her mind. Had she truly prepared them for the challenges ahead, or had she merely ignited a spark without the fuel to sustain it? The evening sun cast long shadows over her desk as she stepped back into her office, her heart racing. The energy of change was undeniable, yet it pulsed with uncertainty. Jasmine understood she wasn't merely a beacon of hope. She was now a harbinger of impending reckoning, and as she reflected on this moment, she wondered if she had the strength to not just lead her team through the challenges, but also ensure that success was an enduring legacy rather than a one-time affair. Would the winds of transformation carry them far enough, or would they stall midway, caught in the traps of their own fears? The stakes were higher than ever, and Jasmine felt the real battle was just beginning. Jasmine awoke the next day with a gnawing sense of urgency. The meeting had ignited something within her, but as the sun crept through her window, the glow felt more like an interrogation light. Had she pushed too hard? She turned the questions over in her mind as she brewed her morning coffee, hoping to summon clarity. It was not enough to just advocate for change. She needed to construct a robust plan that would sustain momentum. At her desk, she spread out her notes and the feedback from the executives. They had nodded, they had shown interest, but had they truly absorbed the gravity of the initiative she was proposing? Jasmine grabbed her laptop and began drafting a follow-up email. It couldn't just be a summary, it had to be a call to action, urging them to adopt their own fears as fuel to transform not just the company, but the entire industry. After she sent the email, Jasmine decided to walk. The crisp morning air reignited her determination. Each step was an assertion of her resolve, and the familiar streets of her neighborhood stood as a testament to her growth. She recalled the countless times she had felt marginalized, a feeling many had dismissed as mere inconvenience. The disparity she had experienced brewed a relentless drive to ensure change wasn't just a fleeting moment. With a renewed sense of purpose, she returned to her office and called a meeting with her core team. As they gathered around the table, Jasmine felt the shift she had longed for. Their eyes sparkled with eagerness, a willingness to explore the unknown together. She shared her vision, emphasizing the need for specific strategies that would align their values with actionable steps. Change isn't just a tidal wave, it's also the steady tide that carves the shore, she said, drawing in their attention. We have to be brave, but we also need structure. Let's create a strategic plan that not only speaks to our goals, but also resonates with our values. This means harnessing our individual skills and experiences. The ideas began to flow. Molly, a marketing coordinator, suggested an outreach campaign connecting with disadvantaged communities to bring awareness to the brand's new inclusive initiatives. Amir, the finance lead, proposed a partnership with organizations aligned with their vision. Jasmine's excitement surged as they began to coalesce around their collective responsibility. Yet amid this energy, Jasmine sensed a rising counterpoint. The slightly terrified expressions of her teammates hinted at the pressure of their ambitions. The stakes were real, and she knew the significance of fostering an environment that could retain that spark long after fleeting enthusiasm faded. "Fear is natural," she voiced, recalling the tension from her own experience in the meeting. "But it's okay to feel that. It's how we respond to that fear that will define our trajectory." Encouraging vulnerability while building a solid strategy felt crucial. It wasn't merely about her leading, it was about everyone's ownership in the process. As they formulated timelines and metrics for accountability, Jasmine felt a thread of tension tighten in the room. Each member had a stake in this new direction, yet what if their fears overwhelmed them, leading to inaction? She needed to confront the fear of failure that loomed over the initiative, and so did they. "We have to confront the worst-case scenarios together," Jasmine proposed, instinctively grasping the tension and transforming it into a real conversation. "What is our biggest fear about this endeavor? If we tackle it now, we can build redundancy into our plan. Let's prepare for the storm now, so we can ride the wave later." The room fell silent. Jasmine could feel the collective apprehension, but beneath it lay burgeoning courage. They began to articulate their fears. What if the community didn't respond? What if expenses soared? By bringing these fears into the open, she saw them sharing strategies and building resilience among one another. As the meeting concluded, she felt a serene sense of accomplishment. They were evolving, but this was just the beginning. She had transformed her personal doubts into collective actions, bridging what could have been to what now was. However, when she stepped back into her office, a darker thought gnawed at the edge of her mind. Could she manage the inevitable resistance from industry veterans who viewed her initiatives as challenges to the status quo? This remnant of uncertainty lingered as she sipped her lukewarm coffee, reminding her that the storm was approaching, and with it, new confrontations awaited. Was she prepared for the backlash that loomed ahead, as her ascent to transformative leadership was met with relentless opposition? The next move was critical, and the stakes just became higher. Jasmine sat at her desk, a surge of adrenaline mingling with doubt. The meeting had sparked a fire within her, but uncomfortable thoughts soon encroached. What if her proactive steps ignited backlash from those set in their ways? What if the very executive she sought to inspire saw her as a disruptive force? Each scenario spun in her mind, threading through her resolve like a persistent vine. The moment she redirected her focus to the new strategic plan, the tension would shift back towards determination. She needed to understand the competitive landscape better to prepare herself for the oncoming challenges. Taking a deep breath, she opened her laptop again, this time initiating a comprehensive research phase. It was not enough to speak about change. She needed empirical backing to support her team's vision. Hours passed as she scrutinized industry reports, case studies, and articles highlighting both triumphs and failures in organizational transformations. She noted critical themes: effective communication, inclusion strategies, and proactive community engagement weren't merely ideals. They were essential components of sustainable change. Yet even as she filled her notes, a subtle nagging persisted in the back of her mind. Knowledge feels like power when it's shared, yet she could not expect her team to combat the threats alone. With renewed clarity, Jasmine decided to tap into her personal network, seeking mentorship and allies who had traversed similar paths. Picking up her phone, she dialed her former supervisor, Lila. As the call connected, she hesitated, but Lila answered with the kind of familiar warmth that put her at ease. "Jasmine, it's so good to hear from you. How is everything? I've hit a juncture in my career that feels crucial. I could really use your advice on navigating corporate resistance," she said, laying bare her concerns. Lila listened intently as Jasmine unfolded her initiative and the fears dwelling within her. "I admire your ambition, Jasmine. I've faced pushback many times in my career," Lila replied thoughtfully. "One thing I learned is to anticipate resistance, not with defiance, but with patience and strategy. How often are you presenting your ideas? Engaging those veterans first can make a difference." Pondering this, Jasmine realized she had mainly focused on stating her case rather than attempting to integrate feedback from senior executives. Lila's advice rang true. Perhaps the approach should be more akin to negotiation, inviting them into the conversation rather than presenting them with a finished product. The following days transformed into a whirlwind of meetings with her core team and preliminary discussions with select executives. Jasmine broadcasted her vision not as a rigid proposal, but as a living framework that required input and evolution. Striking a balance became her new mantra. She reiterated the importance of their combined efforts in crafting a plan that would not only resonate, but also withstand scrutiny. Yet even as enthusiasm grew amongst her team, Jasmine felt an undercurrent of anxiety return. Beyond the boardroom, this was a personal mission with real stakes. Change could dismantle entrenched privileges. What if her actions disrupted relationships that mattered? Would her journey toward leadership yield unexpected collateral damage? During one late-night brainstorming session, anxiety resurfaced in the guise of a cold sweat. Would she wind up isolated if her initiatives were viewed as too radical? A wave of doubt distracted her, just as her pen hovered above the paper, ready to sketch out another proposal. Thoughts of what had been drove a stake through her innovation, but suddenly it became crystal clear. Fear could serve as a catalyst, igniting not just change, but connection. The next step felt both inevitable and daunting. Jasmine needed to openly confront her fears within the context of the looming backlash. She grasped her pen and began drafting the next email, planning a preemptive strike, an invitation to a round-table discussion aimed at fostering dialogue rather than debate. The moment she pressed send, a sense of empowerment surged through her, but as she leaned back in her chair, the weight of what lay ahead constricted around her chest. Was she truly ready for the conversations to come? Confronting the veterans would be the ultimate test of her resolve. What lay ahead would determine not only her place within the company, but would also illuminate the path to her true self. Would she emerge fortified, or would this lead to her undoing? The very idea of the upcoming confrontation left her both invigorated and afraid, drawing her to the precipice of change. With the stage set, Jasmine's mind whirled with anticipation. Could she withstand the storm? The echoes of uncertainty reverberated as she prepared for an encounter that could reshape everything. Would her courage stand against the gale of favored tradition? The next chapter awaited, alluring, heart-pounding, uncertain. Jasmine paced the room, the soft glow of her laptop screen illuminating the shadows of her unease. The round-table discussion was only a day away, yet each tick of the clock intensified her doubts. She had spent so many nights preparing, reviewing her notes, and anticipating potential objections, but now the weight of her expectations bore down on her. Would her commitment to fostering dialogue resonate, or would it invite scorn? The thought of being in the same room with the very leaders she had sought to influence stirred a whirlpool of emotions. Each name she read on the attendance list rang out like a warning bell. Greg, Lee, Evelyn, veterans known for their adherence to tradition. Jasmine had to remind herself that this wasn't just a battle of wills. It was a chance to lay the groundwork for collaboration. She needed to approach it as more than a meeting. It was the beginning of a new dialogue, a partnership in progress. Before bed that night, Jasmine drafted and redrafted her opening remarks, obsessively refining the language. She sought to balance respect for their experience with the imperative of change. Her words had to strike a chord, making it clear that she valued their insights while still positioning her vision as crucial for the company's evolution. Yet each attempt surfaced her anxiety anew. What if their responses cut deeper than any criticism she had received before? What if her vision was too grand for their cautious outlook? She wrestled with the terrifying notion that she could lose the very support she sought to build. The morning of the meeting brought a nervous energy she couldn't shake. The sun filtered through the blinds of her office, but Jasmine felt clouded inside. She practiced her speech silently, envisioning each participant's expression, anticipating nods and frowns alike. Was her confidence a mask, or could she truly embody the leader she aspired to be? As the clock ticked closer to noon, Jasmine noticed a pile of files on the corner of her desk, reminders of countless projects left unfinished. Among them were notes from discussions with her team, moments when they had shared thoughts that resonated deeply. They weren't just her allies, they were her inspiration. They believed in her, and that belief had to carry her through the circle of opposition she was about to face. Arriving at the boardroom, Jasmine's stomach churned, but she forced herself to stand tall. As she stepped inside, she immediately felt their eyes upon her, some curious, others skeptical. With a steadying breath, she greeted them, her voice steady as she introduced the agenda. "Thank you for being here today. I see this as an opportunity for all of us. Together, we can redefine how our company aligns with the future." The faint murmur of distinct skepticism caught her attention, echoing in her mind like a chorus. Instinctively, she shifted her approach, inviting feedback before diving further into her presentation. Would her strategy of vulnerability open doors, or would it expose her to further scrutiny? The traditionalists around the table glanced at each other, assessing. A moment of silence enveloped the room, and Jasmine's heart raced. Then Greg cleared his throat. "It's an interesting proposal," he began, but his tone betrayed an undertone of doubt. Jasmine prepared herself to deflect, to transform his cautious words into a space for dialogue. This was precisely what she needed, an opening to showcase her ability to engage and innovate. "We appreciate your vision," Evelyn chimed in, "but how do we balance that with our established processes? We have a system for a reason." Her thoughts raced, and a quiet resolve washed over her. Was this not the very essence of her mission, to challenge established systems in favor of growth? "I believe we can merge innovation with process," Jasmine replied, her voice now stronger. "By integrating our current systems with new strategies, we not only respect our history, but also adapt for a competitive future." As the discussion surged and receded throughout the meeting, Jasmine felt the undercurrents of anxiety still there, but they no longer dominated her thoughts. Every question and critique became a stepping stone toward refinement, a dialogue rather than a confrontation. The meeting stretched on, turning into an intricate dance of ideas and pushbacks. When Jasmine left the boardroom, her heart swelled with newfound determination. She hadn't just laid out her blueprint, she had initiated the kind of connection that could shift mindsets. But dark whispers still lingered. Would the seeds of connection take root, or would the company resist her vision in the shadows? The stakes felt Everest high, and Jasmine realized this was just the beginning. As she forced herself to step back and reflect on the complexities of what had unfolded, one question echoed loudest. Was she prepared for the inevitable pushback from those with more power and influence than her? The next challenge awaited, looming just over the horizon, and it filled her with both dread and exhilaration. As Jasmine walked out of the boardroom, the weight on her shoulders felt both familiar and new. The conversations from the meeting played in her mind like a soundtrack, each tune echoing her attempts to integrate innovation with the company's time-honored practices. While she had managed to engage them in discussion, the apprehension of their resistance danced just at the edge of her consciousness. Her successful navigation of the boardroom debate did not quell her doubts. What if their skepticism stifled the momentum she hoped to build? Jasmine found herself at a crossroads. She had initiated a dialogue, but sustaining it required more than mere conversation. It demanded strategy, perseverance, and perhaps an element of risk she hadn't quite embraced yet. Back at her desk, she found herself staring at her laptop, refreshing the same documents she had studied for weeks. The vision she had crafted, one that seemed so clear during the meeting, now felt obscured. She glided her fingers across the keyboard, detailing her thoughts, struggling to balance clarity and ambition. "We must adapt," she typed, "yet we cannot disregard the foundation we've built." Pacing alongside her desk, Jasmine glanced at the unfinished projects piled in the corner. Those files represented lost opportunities, remnants of initiatives she hadn't pushed hard enough to finish. Could she indeed lead innovation if she couldn't navigate her team through their hesitations to embrace change? That evening, after a grueling day of tension and triumph, Jasmine met with her mentor, Marcus, a seasoned executive who had always encouraged her to dig deeper into her leadership style. As they sipped coffee in the bustling cafe down the street, he leaned back, studying her expression. "Tell me what's on your mind, Jess. I feel like I've made progress today, but it's only the beginning. I worry about sustaining the dialogue," she confessed, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "What if they ignore my vision? I don't want my ideas to falter in this environment of tradition." Marcus nodded, giving her words weight. "You're getting responses that matter. It's not about having all the answers. Show them the purpose behind your vision. Connect it to our values. Validate their concerns by addressing them directly with data and empathy," he advised, his gaze unshaken. "But what if I become too reliant on their feedback? I can't fade into the background," she pondered aloud, a taut strand of insecurity beginning to unfurl. "Feedback doesn't diminish your voice, Jasmine. Use it to ask better questions. Engage them. This isn't about you versus them. It's about collaboration. Propel that conversation forward, Marcus encouraged, his words slowly embedding a sense of resolve within her. As they left the cafe, Jasmine felt a burst of clarity wash over her. She didn't just want to survive, but thrive amidst discomfort when pushing past pushback. Every question or opposition would carve a path for deeper understanding. Yet, as she embraced this mentality, another thought crept in. Was it enough? Would the collaboration foster the kind of loyalty she needed to push her initiatives through? Then, without warning, a familiar apprehension gripped her heart again. She recalled Greg's doubting tone, Evelyn's probing questions. How far could she push? The upcoming presentation with the executive team loomed, a challenging platform where her resolve would face trials anew. In the days that followed, Jasmine practiced her delivery meticulously, refining her approach with every iteration. She sought not only to present ideas, but to present herself as an ally in the process of growth and understanding. Perched at her desk one evening, with her notes scattered like puzzle pieces around her, the realization struck. She needed to unveil her narrative, tapping into her experiences that fueled her ambition, not just as an employee, but as a custodian of change. Yet the specter of doubt lingered. Every plan she crafted led her to more complex questions. With increased stakes and power dynamics at play, how well could she maneuver through the shifting thresholds of leadership? The day before her pivotal presentation, Jasmine sat quietly, reflecting on the long way she had come. But with every spike of confidence, the chilling question remained. Was she ready to shoulder the responsibility if everything she envisioned didn't materialize? Determined to find answers, she prepared for what she knew could be her defining moment, a chance to either solidify her influence or give in to the fears that haunted her. And just like that, the horizon expanded, teeming with possibilities and peril alike. Would she be the catalyst for change, or an echo in the shadows? As she pondered her path, she felt the first truth of this stage of her journey. It was time to confront the resistance head-on. The moment of truth was approaching, and the air crackled with anticipation. Jasmine awoke, with the sun peeking through her window, illuminating the room with a soft glow. The discomfort of nervous energy enveloped her, her mind racing with thoughts of the presentation that awaited her. Today was different. It felt like the culmination of all her efforts thus far, a test not just of her ideas, but of her character. She dressed meticulously, selecting a tailored suit that made her feel powerful, yet approachable. As she glanced at her reflection, she could see the tension underlining her determined gaze. This was the moment to embody the change she wanted to inspire, to become a living testament to her vision. Arriving at the office, Jasmine found her colleagues already gathered in the expansive conference room. The atmosphere buzzed with an anticipation that mirrored her own anxiety. As she entered, their eyes fell upon her, some curious, others skeptical. It was as if she was standing on a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. She took her seat, shifting the stack of presentation notes in front of her. The projector flickered to life, illuminating her well-prepared slides, each crafted with care, merging innovation with their ingrained values. Yet, despite the confidence she'd sown into her outfit and her meticulously curated argument, doubt crept in. Were her insights robust enough to withstand the scrutiny they would face today? The meeting began, with her colleagues sharing updates and insights, their voices weaving through the fabric of office camaraderie. Jasmine forced herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself of Marcus's advice to view this as a collaborative dialogue, not a battleground. However, as Greg launched into a critique of recent performance metrics, Jasmine felt the pricking stab of self-doubt resurface. Perhaps our focus should remain on the proven methods that have consistently delivered results, he stated, gesturing toward her slides before sitting back, his expression disinterested. The statement hung in the air, a counterpoint tugging at her resolve. Fueled by determination, Jasmine interjected, "While tradition has indeed served us well, I believe that to remain competitive, we need to challenge the status quo. Change doesn't diminish our foundation, it builds upon it." The words escaped her lips, leaving a surprisingly solid echo in the room. Some colleagues nodded, yet she could sense the tension, the division forming between belief in change and fear of it. Jasmine pressed on, presenting her ideas with vigor, weaving in data and potential impacts. She responded to objections with facts and empathy, her cadence gaining momentum as she harnessed the energy of the room. But with every positive reaction came whispers of uncertainty. Evelyn, known for her critical perspective, leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "What assurances can you provide that shifting our approach won't jeopardize our current client relationships?" With every question posed, Jasmine felt the weight of scrutiny, but fabricating doubt into resolve became her secret weapon. "Evelyn, I appreciate your concern. I'm not asking for an overnight transformation, but a gradual evolution, one that seeks to align with our clients' expectations and market trends." Her voice, imbued with authenticity, resonated with the audience. Yet as the dialogue unfolded, Jasmine became acutely aware of the challenge before her. She was not merely combating skepticism, she was wrestling with her fear of inadequacy. The pressure wound tighter, reminding her of the responsibilities she carried and the stakes of her aspirations. Had she set the bar too high? Would this room embrace her vision or brand her an outlier? The room buzzed as colleagues engaged in their debates, some rallying around her, while others dug in their heels. Jasmine felt a moment of clarity wash over her. She needed to craft a bridge between her vision and their fears. If she could create an environment for open dialogue, she could nurture trust within her team. As the meeting carried on, she decided to pivot, acknowledging their concerns directly. "Let's explore how we can pilot these ideas initially, gauging their impact with measurable outcomes." The shift in her approach ignited new energy. It was collaborative rather than combative. Yet just as Jasmine began to see cracks in the resistance, the clock chimed, reminding her that time was slipping away. With a concluding slide that showcased a roadmap to her proposals, she dared to ask, "Can we commit to exploring these avenues together?" Her words hung in the air, ripe with potential, but as they turned to discuss amongst themselves, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Each answer to her questions sparked new challenges, and the uncertainty clouding her vision lingered ominously. As the discussions turned heated, Jasmine's internal alarm blared. A fear simmered beneath her confidence. Had she truly sparked the discussion, or had she inadvertently ignited doubt, more resistance than resolve? And amid the influx of ideas being exchanged, Jasmine braced herself for the realization that this was just the forefront of her battle. Whatever the outcome, the truth was glaring. She had to fortify herself, not just as an advocate for change, but as a leader ready to navigate the uncharted waters of their collective future. The question remained, would her vision transcend the doubts gripping the room? As the dialogue became increasingly passionate, Jasmine steeled herself. This was where her resolve would either flourish or falter. The stakes were higher than ever, and the outcome felt just out of reach. Jasmine broke through the tension in the conference room, her spirit alight with both fear and conviction. The pulse of the discussion was unmistakable. They were engaging, arguing, and most importantly, thinking about her vision. It was uncertain waters, but the dialogue she had sought for so long began to crystallize. Each interaction transformed her resolve into a palpable force. The vision she held closely was no longer hers alone. It took shape through collaboration. Every concern and critique, rather than pulling her down, buoyed her, filling the room with a collective energy that made the atmosphere sizzle. As the hours unfolded, what began as resistance morphed into curiosity. They were no longer merely apprehensive executives questioning her ideas. They had become co-creators of a broader narrative. Jasmine steered them toward crafting a pilot initiative that would not only address their fears, but also actively involve them in the process. What if we implement a 90-day trial with specific metrics? We can measure our progress, and if we see tangible benefits, we'll expand from there. Your experiences will shape this. You'll lead the vision alongside me. As she spoke, she could see their expressions shift. Subtle nods, raised eyebrows, signals that they were open to her proposal. She took a deep breath, infusing her voice with warmth. Every pulse of vulnerability became a strength. Her own past, filled with challenges and victories, had forged her to advocate for something greater than herself. In that pivotal moment, Jasmine realized she had crossed a threshold. The internal struggle against self-doubt no longer ruled her. She commanded the space. The conversation began to merge ideas instead of flattening them. Greg suggested areas for their client feedback aspects, while Evelyn connected the initiative to untapped markets. The very executives who once posed challenges were now champions, seeing the vision fully entwined with their expertise. A sense of triumph flooded Jasmine as she witnessed the transformation unfold. It wasn't just her presentation that mattered, it was their partnership in this venture. Together, they acknowledged the fear woven into the fabric of tradition, but faced it with renewed purpose. The round table, once a battlefield of interests, had evolved into an incubator for ideas, a collaboration bridging the gap between past and future. At last, as the sun began to set beyond the glass walls of the conference room, Jasmine wrapped up the meeting. She smiled at her team of executives, seen not just as their CEO, but as a leader they could trust and rally around. They were not just stakeholders, they were co-authors of a new chapter. Their decision to proceed with the pilot initiative was a stepping stone, but it represented so much more. It served as a testament to the power of openness, vulnerability, and teamwork. Jasmine proved to herself that she could inspire change, not by forcing it, but by inviting others to join her on the journey. As she walked out of the conference room, the weight she carried transformed into lightness. She felt raw confidence surging through her veins, no longer defined by fear. Instead, it was buoyed by validation from her peers. She had achieved not only a specific goal, but marked her evolution as a leader, capable of forging pathways through uncertainty. Jasmine paused in the hallway, a deliberate moment of reflection. She thought about her grandmother's words from years ago on resilience and pride. The fight against bias was far from over, but within her, a solid foundation had been established. She had found her voice amid chaos and had steered it toward constructive dialogue, evidence of her growth. The new initiative's success depended on collective ownership and shared responsibility. With each follow-up meeting, Jasmine envisioned not just progress metrics, but thriving connections among teammates. They would celebrate small victories, address fears collaboratively, and transform setbacks into regrouping opportunities. With one last inhale of homegrown courage, Jasmine strode confidently toward her office. She was ready for whatever awaited her next. This was only the beginning, and she embraced the ongoing challenge with fortitude. She had reclaimed her narrative, honored her ancestors, and established herself not just as a decision-maker, but as an equitable leader, prepared to uplift those alongside her. Despite the shadows that still lingered, her heart raced with excitement for the road ahead. She knew deep within that ongoing transformation meant not just achieving recognition, but embodying empowerment for others. The future awaited, and with clarity born from her journey, Jasmine Lewis was fully prepared to seize it. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.